Hello, it is great to have you on yet another episode of ELIMU Ninguvu. Now, Kenyan education system has still remained one of the best education systems globally. It has worked for many students. And in the middle of a curriculum reform, some students and some schools have turned into a self-destruction mode. It has gone as far as school arson, unrest, and restlessness that is beyond explanation. But even so, some students and some schools have still remained calm, and they've had a system that has worked peacefully, either because they initiated a project that helped to sustain peace and curb and encounter student unrest, or they simply had a system that has worked and sustained peace over time. Thank you once again. This is ELIMU Ninguvu. You are watching us from KUTV. I am your host, Corazon Safan. Do remember to give us your feedback as we proceed with this discussion on our SMS number, which is also our WhatsApp number, that is 0792 766 and 706. Remember, you can also talk to us on our Facebook fan page, that is ELIMU Ninguvu. And if you like to tweet, then tweet us on our Twitter handle, that is at ELIMUNI_Nguvu. But today we are at Cardinal Otunga, Nairobi, they say. It is here at Kahawa Sukari, and we are joined by students from Kahawa Sukari, that is from Cardinal Otunga, Nairobi, Kahawa Sukari themselves. Say hello to the audience. Hi. And we also have students all the way from Dagoretti High School, people who have known how to keep peace in their school. Say hi to the audience. Hi. Yes, actually. To some people actually were doubting if they're still students, but they are, and they are here to share with us and give us their perspective on what exactly they are doing in their school to sustain peace. And then we are also joined by two teachers from Cardinal Otunga, Nairobi, Kahawa Sukari, and from Dagoretti High School themselves. Thank you very much for joining us on ELIMU Ninguvu this evening. So just to hit the road and hit it on the nail directly. Kenyan schools are on fire, literally, not figuratively. They are burning. And these are students you have lived with, or we have lived with right from the beginning, from Form 1, from Form 2, Form 3, Form 4, and then at some point, they turn against the system that has been feeding them. What is happening? I'll begin from Mr. Wafula. What exactly is happening in our schools?
Thank you. My name is Peter Wafula. I'm a teacher at the Great High School, and I teach mathematics and business studies. And I've been teaching for the last 9 years. It's indeed a sad state in our schools, as all can see, that every other day we are hearing fire, And essentially that's not the purpose of schools. That's not the purpose why the schools were meant to be there. They are not meant to be burning every other day. Instead, we are supposed to be, producing students who are supposed to be responsible adults. So. Personally, as a teacher, from my experience, I can agree to that it's a sad state of affair, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing we can do.
Let's go to Mr. Koech. Just tell us what is happening. What do you think is happening to our students in our school?
First of all, I want to appreciate that we are here to share this discussion about schools. Personally, I'm really interested because as a teacher, as an administrator, been here since we started the school 10 years ago. I've been the principal from up to last year. This year I'm directing the two schools. We have a primary school too. And listening to what's happening in the country, we really want to share the experience that we've had. What is keeping us, what is pushing us, what is sustaining us. And I hope my students here.
Yeah, they'll definitely get to tell us how you did it. And we begin from you, Mr. Koech. Somebody says that the problem doesn't even start in Form 1 for these students, that they start to have pressure, whatever kind of pressure they are referring to, as early as class 4, the moment they get to upper classes. And by the time they're getting to Form 1, they're just waiting to explode. What is the root cause, simply, as a layman would want to know?
It's very interesting, this point, because the idea of school and the idea of success, I think these two things, because we have an idea of school that has really changed, because Now, what we wait from these students is an idea of success that means that if you don't have grades, you are nobody. So what does it mean? It means that in all aspects of their learning, from the beginning, from class 4, from even class 1, even in some schools, even in nursery school, they already have this fact that they are persons if they are doing well. If they have good grades, then their value is high. So I'm imagining this fact that if we see our students in this way, in all the schools, if we see the value of our students based on their grades or the performance of academics, so the one who doesn't have the capacity, what is the reaction?
And I'll go to Mr. Wafula on that very note. Mr. Koech expresses that we assess and qualify and quantify actually, basically based on the grade that they are going to get. We say this is a successful student, this is one who has failed, because this one got a D and this one got an A. Then is that learning? What is the definition of learning? Is that it? Is that what we need from them?
Entirely what I believe is that a school essentially is supposed to mold students into a responsible citizen, so to speak. And so, it's not just a one approach. It's not just about academics, because you can excel, you can get an A as a student. Basically, if we can look at our approach that concerns academic, but there's the character aspect of it. That yes, here you have an A as a student, but also in a character-wise, you also excel in an A. Like I know of a school that has emphasizes on 3 A's. Actually, there's an A in academics, there's an A in character, there is an A in extracurricular activities. So at the end of it all, you're producing a student who is also, as Mr. Koech is saying here, that we tend to focus that you must get an A, you must be a pilot, you must be a doctor, and we forget other aspects of
and unfortunately, even if we were to emphasize on character and on other skills, affective skills, for example, we would never have a way to assess it and to also give grades to a student who has good character and have him present this as maybe as a form of certificate that they were given or something. Do you think then maybe there is a gap there?
I tend to think others. I think, in terms of character, it's something that we need to instill in a student. That is not necessary that we'll want to examine you in terms of, for example, honesty. How we measure your level of honesty. But we as a school or as an institution, there are some aspects that we really must come up with that will help to instill some of these key characters that we consider that will be patterned and parcel of a student's life, regardless of where he or she goes after school. They are patterned parcel of him or her.
And definitely, yes, Mr. Koech, on the same conversation.
I think, for example, looking at the experience that we try to build in our school, I don't think it's even useful to examine this, because a person is a person. I carry my personality in school, outside school, at home. So what I need is a concrete way of living that is useful in school and useful at home and useful on the road. So this means that what we need to have is what culture do we grow? But this culture depends very much with what we think about success.
Is it just the emphasis on academic success that is creating this explosion, or is there something else that maybe is not open to the eye? The reason why children are turning against the systems that are feeding them?
A few suggestions looking at the experience of schools. One, apart from this, of course, is also that the world is changing. It's really changing fast. Things are changing. So, when I was moving from my village to go to the boarding school, it was different. It was like an upgrade.
You felt good. Moving to the next level.
It was moving to the next level. This has changed. Many children have come from families that have very better living conditions. So it's a downgrade. Yeah. the system, maybe has remained the same kind of facility, the same kind of food, the same kind of. So some of
and
these
yet,
things,
socioeconomically, maybe people's
things
lifestyle
have
has
changed a lot.
grown.
The lifestyle has moved. For example, I'm talking about change. Change in the sense that what worked for my parents hasn't worked for me.
What is it that they say has remained the same? Because after all, just briefly, the class has to remain the same, most probably. Or is there anything that should change?
It's evident, actually, that as he says, the world is dynamic, and so is, all the things we need. We keep seeing things coming up every other day. Just like, for example, when you talk about technologies, keeps on changing, not the same as it was there. So the same case, it's also applying to even our education system. And probably one of the things that we also need to appreciate is that the youth of today or the young people of today are not the same as that of yesterday or yesteryears, for example. And so even the approach, the manner in which we approach, we look at this in terms of even the teaching, even the way parents how to support your kids to attain education is really different. But I also want to look at something at a societal level, for example, that I realize that at a general level, our schools have turned into sort of a place to dump societal issues and problems. For instance, if we have HIV and AIDS, it's a problem, it's a societal problem. But we realize that there are people who suggest that for us to address this, let us introduce it as a subject taught in school. If it's corruption, let us introduce it as a subject to be taught in school. So it's like we are even overburdening already the burdened students with so many things. Instead, we need to develop a system, like now what we are saying, that we need to appreciate that how can we move away from the traditional way that a teacher stands in class. Just doesn't mean that we have to move now, we are teaching them everything. If it's about conflicts, we have now to introduce something to do with conflict. We have to show them, to learn that for you to grow up as a responsible father, as a responsible mother, as a responsible citizen, these are some of the aspects, these are some of the values that must be part and parcel. That you must have them as a citizen, first as a citizen, because we are living in a country, and we must of all appreciate that we have a country that we must all of us be proud of. So from there now, this is as student, as an education system, we are mentoring, we are teaching, we are providing learning. But at the end of the day, it's not just learning for books. It's learning, that is more general.
Somehow the society has decided that to bring these values home, maybe we need to introduce these conflicts to them and have them get it the right way right from school. What is your perspective on this? And how, if this particular line of thought is one of the reasons for conflict, then how is it affecting the learners, in your opinion?
One thing that we have to understand, even as these things happen, is that what is it that the students are shouting for? What is the defense that they are making?
Because they are screaming.
They're screaming.
They're asking for help in one way or another.
Also, what is it that they're defending?
There's something that maybe we want to take from them, and they're trying to hold on to it.
And so we have to understand these things. In this aspect, because also for change that we're speaking about. Look, last week there was a player that was sold for 15 billion shillings. He's called Pogba, something like this. He was bought by Manchester United. He's a footballer. He's not an academic. No. Is he successful or not?
He is. Isn't he?
Yeah. He's making money. But we're still insisting on some aspects. The world is changing. People are making money, success in many different ways. So are we giving value to this changing?
Are we embracing this change? And putting, if we were to put this change together with our education system, in your opinion as a teacher, how would we put it together?
No, it means first and foremost is the fact that we really have to see what's happening in the world. Okay? What's happening in the world? Which part of the world is, for example, the economy of the world, for example, like America. What is driving that economy? Is the guys from Silicon Valley. They're producing apps that are used by everyone in the world. They're buying apps from Israel and other places.
Technology is ruling the world right
you know.
now. So let's bring technology home, one.
So first of all is this, that, so are we free with this? Two, when we were growing up, for example, let me use my example. When I was growing up, the chances of succeeding outside the academics were slim. Okay. So if I wanted to grow, for example, economically or socially, to make about mobility, then school was.
Or unless you are a lady and you are to get married in a different
Yes,
class.
so, but you know,
So if you're a gentleman, you have to work hard.
You have to work hard. You pass through the school. We didn't have, for example, successful people in music. We didn't have very successful athletes. My classmates who are very good athletes did not make money. But now young athletes are making money. Footballers, all the guys, musicians. So it means that we have to be open.
We have to see what their talents are and their skills.
We have to see. But you see, this means that we have to be very attentive to the times that we are living.
We have to listen to it. There is a conversation, and thank you very much for that, but there's a conversation that Mr. Ofula initiated, and I wanted to hear your view about that. The social ills that and conflicts that we have introduced, maybe with the hope that our learners are going to adopt better values as they grow up, corruption, HIV and AIDS. What's your perspective on this?
What we are doing is that we want to preach by these kind of things that we introduce. The preaching doesn't change. And experience changes. So it means that if we introduce these values, but outside, these values are not lived because we are doing corruption outside. And then they want to tell the students, you know, corruption is bad. But we are doing it.
You're trying to preach it, and then nobody's living it.
No, we are the ones who are preaching it. We are doing it. And then we say, now please, you know, corruption is terrible, okay? So this is what they're telling us, to do this in school. But the problem is, it's somewhere else.
The change has to begin from somewhere. We have to take a break. I'm going to finish with Mr. Wafula on a conversation that he began on the changing times.
Yes.
Technology is here. They love watching TV, and actually, as a matter of fact, research shows that nowadays they don't even like watching TV as much. They like more interactive platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook. Is it true that this is what we need to introduce into the system so that at least all the burning up should stop?
One thing that I recognize is that we must appreciate the dynamism that is there in all aspects. And a good example is that, you know, I'm sure Mr. Koech here during their time when they're in school, definitely, during their time when they're in school, I'm sure is that the approach, the teachers then, how they even used to talk to them. You know, you'll even be told that there were those, you know, teachers who are labeled no nonsense. You know, you just stand there and everything moves the way. But you see, the world today, even as we bring the issues of constitution and all that, these young people know their rights, know what they are supposed to, you know, even the way you talk to them. So I think that is also another way of dynamism, that even the approach in a manner in which as a teacher I talk to my student, it doesn't mean that I'm going to kneel before that student to tell him or her do this and that, but there's an approach that I need to give it. And so even in the delivery of probably the content, we know that these young people are lovers of technology. They're lovers of the, you know, issues to do with technology now is the order of the day. Probably we need to also look at how can we move away from the traditional way, look at how do we address these challenges so that we don't address the current issues in the same old way that I see it causes a bit of friction. But I also want to mention on the issues of the burnout and all that, we also must appreciate that these students, for example, I want to give an example of Dagoretti High School. Dagoretti High School has a population of about 1,000 students. These students do not come from the same home. They are not brought up in the same manner. They are meeting in a school to study. So they come and meet from different backgrounds. So some of these students may also be carrying pressures from even where they are coming from. It's not just that the school is contributing to all this in a way that, you know, when a school is banned, you see that, you know, they give reasons we are not listened to. Some of those, in my view, I tend to imagine, there could be reasons, but there are some things that they have carried even Their parents are not listening to them, probably. Their parents are giving them a lot of pressures, probably, where they come from.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We have to go for a short break.
Thank you.
ELIMU Nguvu now takes a short break, but here is a question. Has the system remained behind? Has the beneficiaries or the students gone far much ahead of the system? What exactly is the role of the parent? And why is the school entirely blamed for the gaps that have been created, maybe by the entire system? We are coming back with more on this conversation, including the students' perspective. This is ELIMU Nguvu coming to you from KUTV. Stay with us. We'll be right back.